Somehow, a London double-decker bus found its way into War Thunder. Let's check out the English Electric Lightning F.6. What an amazing plane. I have to confess, I've been looking forward to making this video for quite some time. The English Electric Lightning was originally designed and built in the early 1950s as the P-1, simply at first as a test aircraft to evaluate supersonic aerodynamics and different wing configurations. Eventually, the British decided they didn't really want these supersonic Soviet bombers they'd been hearing about under development, doing an air show over London. And they got serious about developing a supersonic interceptor and weapons suited for that kind of a mission. A few proposals were rejected as unworkable or because they'd simply take too long to get into production, so the old P-1 research plane was rolled out of the closet and polished up into a production fighter. While it may have been somewhat of a practical option, the design was chosen simply because it was already available. The resulting fighter, named the Lightning, ended up being an extremely capable aircraft, very well suited to its intended mission as an interceptor of supersonic bombers from the 1960s. It entered service in 1960 with the RAF and was eventually also used by Kuwait and Saudi Arabia as well. The Lightning is a very distinct aircraft, with an unusual swept-wing configuration and a unique double-decker engine layout. Even during testing, the Lightning was easily supersonic and demonstrated great flight performance for its time. The weapon system ended up being a little troublesome to develop, and they went through a few different projects before settling on what would eventually become the Red Top missile. It took a while to get Red Top operational, so the older Firestreak was used as an interim solution while the Red Top was still under development. Originally, the Red Top was intended to be an all-aspect weapon. The idea was to detect the surface heat of Soviet bombers flying at supersonic speeds as their fuselage experienced friction with the air so that they could be intercepted from the front while they were still on approach. In practice, the Red Top did have some limited all-aspect capability, but that isn't really modeled in War Thunder. The loadouts that the Lightning gets are basic. Just 2 Firestreaks or 2 Red Tops. That's it. The Firestreak ends up being a pretty average missile for its BR, solid for an entry-level option, while the Red Top outperforms it in basically every way. If you're used to using American or Soviet missiles, these British weapons will take a little practice. Their performance is totally different, but once you get a feel for what shots are safe, you can get some solid hits without a whole lot of trouble. The radar system is basic. Very much a product of the early 1960s. No advanced modes, and it can have trouble locking targets, but it has a decent search range. The Red Top missile can slave to your seeker, so it's worthwhile trying to get those radar locks. There are a couple of things I want to demonstrate as we start looking at the Lightning's flight performance. The Lightning F.6 can supercruise. You can punch through Mach 1 without using the afterburner, even at low level. In a lot of the footage here, you'll notice me flying without the afterburner, and that's not always a mistake or anything on this plane. Sometimes it's actually difficult to manage your speed and avoid overtaking targets you're trying to stay behind during close-in maneuvers or sort of like medium-speed combat. Similarly, the climb performance of the Lightning is totally inappropriate. You can just point this thing almost at a 45-degree angle right after takeoff and still accelerate up through Mach 1 in a climb. Just crazy performance. Something to keep in mind though, the Lightning's engines are very smoky without the afterburner, so if you play simulator battles, it's probably worth keeping in mind that your engine smoke might be a giveaway in visual combat. The biggest real problem with the Lightning though is that it has a very low maximum speed relative to its insane engine performance. At low altitudes, you'll rip your wings off at about Mach 1.2, or around 1,325 kilometers an hour. The good news is, once you hit Mach 1.03 or so, you kind of hit a brick wall on your acceleration, so this won't happen much in actual gameplay. You're not going to have too many opportunities to just fly in a straight line for about 3 minutes on full afterburner. You're going to constantly be getting warnings about your speed, and that beeping, reduce speed warning can get on your nerves after a while, but generally speaking, I didn't really run into any serious wing ripping problems out in actual missions. Flying the Lightning out was a lot different than I expected. To be honest, I was expecting the Lightning to be crap in air combat, needing to rely on hit-and-run tactics exclusively. But in practice, I found that, while not great, the Lightning wasn't bad at close combat. This isn't a turn fighter, like, not at all. It bleeds off speed quickly in tight turns, and it loses rate at low speeds, but the good news is that the insane engine performance we just talked about can kind of compensate for that a little bit, and your turn performance gets better the faster you're going. I found that at high speeds, the Lightning snaps into excessive g-forces very quickly, and even using the tap elevator pitch down method, I blacked out in this thing all the time. It's worth noting while you're watching the gameplay footage that my British pilot in this slot isn't maxed out, so the blackout performance might be a little easier for you. Also noteworthy, the roll rate on the Lightning is genuinely bad at basically any speed. Overall, its maneuvering capabilities were very average. Some areas were good, some areas were not so good. The guns, well, I never really got the hang of them. I was able to get gun kills sometimes, but honestly, I had to spray and pray rather than using discipline bursts. The guns are located below the Lightning's midsection and have a very low cyclic rate and a strange lead profile, so they'll take some practice. The Lightning also has no countermeasures, and you absolutely will be placed into matches with opponents who do, so you gotta be careful with picking your engagements. Overall, because the maneuverability is really only average and the weapons load is so light, I found that staying with your team was essential during the early development of a match. Once the furball develops, consider just trying to run passes through it, rather than getting caught up inside of it. There are a lot of different flight and mission profiles you can use with the Lightning and be effective. I know that some other people who've, put out content with the Lightning insist that there's only one correct way to fly it, but I found it to be a little bit more flexible than that. Again, it's not a dogfighter, but, it's not an SR-71 either where you have to just fly straight and level all the damn time. You have no air-to-ground weapons besides your guns, so this is very much an air-to-air focused plane, and the stock grind will honestly be really painful since the guns are so difficult to adjust to. Something to keep in mind as you're getting started with the Lightning. If you're having trouble grinding out those first few upgrades, it's not just you. Some people think the Lightning is a pretty ugly plane, but I've always found it appealing. I like its unusual shape, and visually it's modeled very well in War Thunder. There are a healthy variety of different skins you can get, but I'll admit I was a little let down that they didn't have a Saudi Arabian or Kuwaiti paint job available. The cockpit feels... I don't know, it feels a bit cramped. It kind of feels like you're sitting right up with your knees in the instrument panel. I don't know how else to kind of explain it. The visual detail is superb, and you have a radar B-scope fully functional in addition to the regular PPI, but the forward view is a bit obstructed. The instrument layout is intuitive, so no real problems there, but overall I wasn't a huge fan of the Lightning's cockpit. Landing the Lightning won't take you very long to figure out. While you don't have combat flaps, you do have pretty effective landing flaps, as well as an air brake. You can safely drop your gear and flaps at around 450 kilometers an hour, and the Lightning has a braking chute which helps it slow down a bit once you touch down. It's good that the Lightning is so easy to land. Frankly, since its weapon load is so light, you may end up RTB more than often, and definitely more than other planes at this BR. To close up shop on the Lightning F.6, This plane has absurd engine performance and can supercruise even at low altitude. Its missiles have solid performance, and with a little practice, it can defy its reputation as a bad plane. On the flip side, there is a learning curve, so expect to practice quite a bit before you can reliably get kills. Its maneuverability is barely average, and its roll rate kinda sucks. The Lightning has no countermeasures and a very limited weapon load of only 2 missiles. The final verdict on the Lightning F.6 is that it's painful to grind, but fun to fly. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but honestly, I never felt comfortable. I was constantly wondering if I was screwing something up because it has such a reputation as being a tricky and painful plane to fly. This won't be an RP grinder, but it can be a fun jet with a little practice. As always, thanks for watching.